This is my last free agency video. We talked about the winners, we talked about the losers, mainly big names, but who are the guys that are being overlooked? The guys that could be draft steals at value for us. This is a great video, not just for redraft, but for Dynasty and best ball as well. What names aren't being talked about enough? I've got 10. Yes, 10. I went a wee bit overboard. I just couldn't help myself. I have 10 players who are sneaky winners. When it comes to free agency winners versus losers, a lot of lists have Rachaad White as a winner. And I do agree with that. This was a positive for him. This was one of the two best locations for his skill set that he could have landed. So realistically, I have no issue with Rachaad White in Washington. But I do think that Jacory Croskey-Merritt is being overlooked. And that is saying a lot because I was very openly anti-Jacory Croskey-Merritt all throughout the season. And I feel very good saying that right now because I was proven correct and I got a ridiculous amount of backlash in season for it. Anytime I posted a trade video that had Jacory Croskey-Merritt as a sell high candidate and bail out immediately, I got a lot of backlash. So if I was anti-Jacory Croskey-Merritt then, why am I pro Jacory Croskey-Merritt now? Well, for one, you guys know that I do not subscribe to Take Lock, and if situations change, my opinion will change too. I may hate you in 2025 and I may love you in 2026. And when it comes to JCM, the reality is that this could have gone a far worse for him. There were a bevy of lead backs in this free agency class, and Washington added a guy that has proven that he's absolutely not a lead back and he's objectively subpar on the ground. His skill set is receiving and blocking, and that is great because that is something that Washington truly needed. But at the end of the day, there's not a remote chance that White will be more effective than JCM on the ground, so that is a win for him. He obviously does still need to make it past the draft because if Jeremiah Love were to fall to Washington, they would absolutely draft him. And JCM then would in fact be null and void. But for right now, if they do not draft a new lead back, JCM would by default retain that early down and goal line work over Rachaad White. It would be a committee. And that is enough to make him fantasy relevant. Jerome Ford was added, but I do think that JCM is the better goal line back as long as he is getting goal line touches. And with Chris Rodriguez out of the picture, if it stays just him, Jerome Ford, and Rachaad White, JCM did benefit here. This one is pretty straightforward here. The Panthers under Dave Canales have shown a very clear pattern. There is no such thing as job security. It doesn't exist. It doesn't matter how much you get paid. You can and will have your job taken away at any time. It can be because you underperformed, a la Miles Sanders, or because someone outperformed you, a la Rico Dowdle taking the job from Chuba Hubbard. And then once you acquire that job, it may not end up being yours anyway. Sorry, Rico Dowdle. So when it comes to this backfield, I have very little faith that Jonathan Brooks can actually sustain a healthy season, but supposedly, he is on track to be ready for OTAs, according to Dave Canales, and that's excellent news. We clearly have no stats to talk about because he has had just 9 carries in the NFL in his very young, injury-plagued NFL career. But Brooks was a strong prospect, and he was to be the starting running back of the future for the Panthers once upon a time. I would expect, considering his pre-injury talent, if he is healthy, he would in fact get playing time so the Panthers can actually judge and see him in action. And if he gets out there and he does well, I would not be shocked if he earns a starting role. Again, this is contingent on him being healthy and actually having the same burst that he had pre-injury. But this free agency worked out very well for Jonathan Brooks. This is another guy who has to make it through the draft. I suspect the Jags will add a running back around round 3 to 5, specifically a receiving back, but if they don't, LeQuint Allen Jr. stands to benefit. We talked about this when we discussed Spatial Tootin. Tootin is not a particularly large running back, but the Jags clearly trust him in short yardage and goal line work. He's got that. I feel very confident that can continue on in 2026. And Liam Cohen doesn't exactly require a massive back in his system. Tootin can catch, right? And he did have a couple of receiving touchdowns, but he really wasn't heavily utilized in that capacity last year from a pass blocking perspective. He is to prove that he can do that. The trust was in Travis Etienne. So we will have to see if Tootin can earn that trust and be a 3-down back. If not, and Cohen opts to split early down and passing down work, Allen Jr. does specifically benefit and does have receiving and blocking skill sets, and we did see him utilized in that capacity last season. And we know that Chris Rodriguez, who was added to this roster, will not be used in that way. And while receiving volume for Travis Etienne wasn't exactly massive last season, it was critical and very valuable from a fantasy perspective because Etienne's receiving work wasn't a whole bunch of checkdowns. It was very key game moments and touchdown. It's big play upside. So, being the trusted receiving back is valuable, especially in terms of offensive snaps here for the Jags. So, again, if there is not a receiving back added in the draft, that does mean that LeQuint Allen Jr. could be fantasy relevant this season, so keep your eye on that. As of right now, Chig Okonkwo would be the second look for Jane Daniels behind Terry McLaurin. Now, I fully expect the Commanders to add another receiver. Adding a day 2 receiver makes sense, and then obviously there's this looming Brandon Ayuk rumor where Washington is the favorite landing spot, but regardless, this is a great setup for Chig Okonkwo. His problem in Tennessee wasn't that he was disappointing in any capacity or struggling as a receiving option. It was just lack of volume in a bad offense. Even with an additional receiver, Chig would still get an upgrade in volume in Washington. So this is a net positive for him regardless of who else they add. And if they don't add anyone else, that's just cherry on top. In 2024, Zach Ertz played a full 17 games with Washington and had 66 receptions on 91 targets for 654 yards and 7 touchdowns. That is volume that Chig could only dream of in Tennessee. And considering that Ertz has been on a downturn in his career for like half a decade now, contextually, that is very significant usage. He also had 72 targets in 13 games this past season. We do have a change in offensive coordinator ahead, but this is a great opportunity for Chig, and he is absolutely a big free agency winner. In no way, shape, or form am I telling you gotta target Jalen McMillan in your typical redraft leagues, but you do need to keep your eyes on this situation because McMillan returned for the final 4 games of the season last year, and it was very interesting. There was one boom game against Miami, which, it's Miami. Well, but that's not what I want to look at. I want to look at the snaps here. That's what matters. McMillan played 46 to 55% of snaps in those 4 games. And that was with Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka, and Chris Godwin all active and healthy. Chris Godwin is 30 years old. And you guys know that I do like Emeka Egbuka for a bounce-back season, but there's also a reality in which McMillan perhaps is the second most fantasy-relevant receiver in this offense. He is very Parker Washington coded for me. Not that they play the same way, but the same scenario. A very young receiver that we've seen pop and could just need more snap opportunities to really come into his own. McMillan is entering year 3 of his career and missed the vast majority of last year with an injury, and he had a whopping 8 touchdowns in his rookie season. I fully understand why you would have zero interest in Arizona's backfield. I don't blame you, and things would definitely get murkier if they do end up drafting Ty Simpson and try to play him right off the bat. But if Jacoby Brissett is the starter, there will be plenty of goal line opportunities and checkdowns. James Conner should theoretically be the lead back, but he is old. He is old, and thinking that there is more in the tank from him is a wee bit optimistic. We also saw him essentially in a committee in the very 3 short games that we saw him and Trey Benson together last year. So outright 3 down back, I don't know if that is continuing in his future. Benson has yet to prove himself whatsoever, and this is a completely new regime, so Tyler Allgeier was the one they opted to bring in. That could be their guy. We know how effective he can be at the goal line, and we know that he is 3 down back capable. With Connor's age being a concern, Tyler Allgeier might just be the most reliable back on roster and could just outright beat everyone else. We didn't expect Tyler Allgeier to go into a clear starting role, so to go to a team with a whole bunch of question marks is really a great opportunity for him, so yeah, winner. Keaton Mitchell feels like a guy that we have been dying to make happen for years now, and it just never really clicks, but maybe the move to LA just might be the perfect situation for him. There has always been some kind of injury with Mitchell, unfortunately, that has held him back, but when he's on the field, the man is just electric. We know the odds of him being the lead back in any scenario are slim due to his size, but the league is getting more and more lenient with these tiny, speedy backs. I mean, just look at De'Von Achane. I mean, actually, really, just look at De'Von Achane, because Achane's former head coach is now the offensive coordinator for the LA Chargers. So if Mike McDaniel is feeling a little nostalgic for De'Von Achane, perhaps he turns to Keaton Mitchell for the same archetype of a running back. He is not going to overtake Amari Hampton. I'm not making that argument, but it would be the perfect change of pace back to play off of the much bigger Amari Hampton. Mike McDaniel's system has been very keen on using multiple backs, and if this offensive line is healthy and Justin Herbert is able to perform at an optimal level, they could absolutely have enough volume for Mitchell to have a meaningful role here. We talked about this in the winners video. I 100% believe that the Seahawks will be drafting a day 2 running back that will likely serve as the lead back while Zach Charbonnet is out and could be the lead back of the future. But there is always a chance that they don't go that route, particularly because this year's draft class is a little slim at running back, and I do personally have a favorite that I would love to see land there in Mike Washington Jr., but perhaps they can't get that and they decide to just wait till 2027. If they do feel confident that they can get by with what they have on roster until Zach Charbonnet is healthy, that is a big win for Emanuel Wilson, because the backfield would just be Wilson and George Holani, who the Seahawks trust for sure. It seems like they definitely like him and trust him on passing downs, but not as a true 3-down back. Wilson showcased very well as the lead back this season in relief of Josh Jacobs when he was injured, and he is 5'10", over 220 pounds, and that would fit very well into the mold of the Seattle Seahawks' preferred type of running back. At the very least, he would be early down and goal line work while Charbonnet is out, and then supplemental when Charbonnet is back. Because again, this is an extremely high volume team. It cannot just be 100% Zach Charbonnet, especially coming off of an injury. Or he could split work in terms of Emanuel Wilson. He could split work with a rookie if they do end up drafting a running back and still have early season value. You never know. So depending on how this plays out with the draft and depending on the timeline for Zach Charbonnet's injury, this could be a very interesting situation for Emanuel Wilson. So here's another guy that I would anticipate will have to deal with an additional receiver once we get through the draft, but a little bit different, because the good news is that we know that it won't be an early round receiver considering they just gave a bag to Alec Pierce. And we can also very safely assume that if they add a receiver, it would not be specifically a slot receiver. So another win for Josh Downs. And we've seen pops of promise here from Downs, but at the end of the day, volume and consistency and upside has been a problem with him. He's talented, but he just hasn't really broken through that ceiling. Re-signing Alec Pierce and trading away Michael Pittman is the far better outcome for Josh Downs, because Pittman played more in the intermediate area, and while we should expect more varied usage from Alec Pierce considering the money they gave him in 2026, he's still primarily a deep threat, which should allow Josh Downs and Tyler Warren, who we also talked about, to benefit very well from Pittman's exit. I would anticipate the Colts add a receiver more for depth rather than somebody to be a big target hog. If this room is really just whittled down to focusing on Alec Pierce, Tyler Warren, and Josh Downs, we can feel much better about Josh Downs' prospects moving forward. Now, Darnell Mooney is a guy where the draft really does matter. We have to make it past the draft. The Giants are a candidate to take a receiver with their first pick, or even Jeremiah Love. I think that they will pass and go with defense, but if they were to draft a high-end receiver, obviously that would kind of nix the whole Darnell Mooney thing. But if they pass on high-end receiver and go with a day 2 option, I would feel really good about Mooney's potential here. We talked about Isaiah Likely's upside in this offense, but Mooney is also a strong candidate to have a bounce-back season here. We know that Mooney is capable of being a true wide receiver too. He's just unfortunately been in terrible quarterback situations, but he still managed to have a 1,000-yard receiver with the combination of Justin Fields as a rookie and Andy Dalton. And then when he went to Atlanta, he was just 8 yards short of another 1,000-yard season with Kirk Cousins in 2024 when he was fresh off that Achilles injury. So there is more to Darnell Mooney. He's a fine receiver, just not the most ideal situations. When Mooney is healthy, he can put up numbers, and this would actually be a really great opportunity for him to actually be able to take on a role in the slot rather than being used as a deep threat. I think that's key here too. Playing off of Malik Neighbors would make so much logical sense. He is a smaller receiver, and he can fill that gap left behind by Wan'Dale Robinson, and if he can specifically secure that role in the slot, that would be critical for him. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tera Time, so make sure that you're locked in, tuned in, subscribe, turn on notifications, and all that good stuff. We are going strong this off season, so stick around.